Let's move on to item number 7.
I'm sorry, Mayor, do we need a sec? Don't we need to direct staff to?
I think I've said that twice, but
So there's no voting on that. We
no. Yes, it's been directed as one of the alternatives to bring back. But however, I do see in the conference room there is a hand up. So let's go to the city manager. Or no? Okay.
Mayor, I was going to address that same point. Why don't we just have it reflected in the minutes that the city council directed staff to come back with an item to delay or defer the 5th-year rate increase for water and sewer. So both actions are reflected in the minutes, and then I think that gives to the concerns universally raised by council.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, now we're going to move on to item 7, comments from council members. And then I'm going to remind us that it is 10:45. And so I'm going to try a little something different just so we can kind of move through these things. So we're going to start with item A and with Linda Mason. And there are a couple items. One is a joint committee meeting with the school board. What I'm going to ask is if the council member can go ahead and make her comments or whatever, then I'm going to go to each colleague one time. Going to ask for questions and comments so that we can keep the ball rolling and make sure we get everybody done at a reasonable hour. So, council member.
Sorry, can we also, just going back to the city manager, delay or defer, or didn't we also say suspend? Just not actually effectuating the increase?
Yeah, I think we can address that. The effect of it would be to not have the rate increase that would have ordinarily took effect in fiscal year 21-22 to occur.
Yes.
So we can find the right adjective and work on it.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, verb.
Okay, now.
Thank you, Mayor.
Council member, first one, joint committee meeting with school board.
Okay, great. So the first is to request an update of the joint committee meeting while looking at our boards and committees as part of the overall governance process. I'm requesting this update because the joint committee is the council's representation on behalf of the city, and it's unclear right now what the role of the council has been in this joint committee. So I don't believe that there is a process in place, but to request that the committee, through our mayor, who is the council's representative to the committee, agendize a discussion around having a joint session with the full city council and the full San Bruno Park School District board. The request is meant to be provided that good cities have good schools. It's more important now than ever that we understand what the other hand of our city is doing. In recent history, our school district and city have had very parallel paths. They've introduced new energetic leadership who was welcomed, committed, and engaged in our entire San Bruno community on their administrative staff. The 21 acres of land sold with potential future land sales and other property designated as surplus would directly impact the city's footprint for generations to come. They have worked closely with the San Bruno Education Foundation, the Community Foundation, to assist our schools with funds as needed, sometimes requesting funds of from the same sources as the city. Schools are integral to our Posey Parade, which I hope this year's will move forward should we be able to curb the surge. Students engage in our park and rec programs, and until this year, the city ran one of the after-school programs for the schools. The schools are beginning their rebuild under Measure X, starting with Allen. And most recently worked together to ensure that there were no Wi-Fi gap with the COVID-19 pandemic. Schools are preparing to go back in session with a hybrid model, which impacts a significant amount of San Bruno's youth population, and it sometimes seems appropriate that we also understand what this looks like and what the plans are. Since this is a city council meeting, I don't need to share all the work that's happening on our end, but I just wanted to give a snippet of what I'm seeing through my son's school and through the school board meetings. The request here is really to ask the committee to agendize this item, to then obviously ask the city manager to work with the superintendent to host a special meeting with the full council and the school board that would appropriately be agendized and have the two only elected bodies in San Bruno meet. With so much going on, it would be ideal to provide each other with some high-level reporting and allow for an opportunity for the two elected boards to really talk about and discuss any future potential for collaboration. It may be enlightening for both elected boards, and more than anything, will open the pathways of communication between two crucial bodies in San Bruno. So I hope the council would support me in this request.
Thank you, and we'll go as if it were a roll call. And so, Councilmember Hamilton, any questions or comments?
Comment, I am supportive of this. I think, I'm assuming that the way that this would move forward is that the existing subcommittee would propose the agenda, and then would that proposed agenda go back to both of the full bodies for approval, just to make sure that everybody has a chance to voice what ends up being on the agenda, or would it be up to the subcommittee only to drive the agenda?
I would actually refer to our city attorney because I have comments, but I want to hear that the official city attorney is responding.
So, thank you, Mr. Hamilton, and then I'll go to Mr. Salazar, and then Mr. Medina, and then then this is Medina. Mr. Salazar.
So it's funny. The last time that we had a joint meeting with the school board was the same year that the storm drain master plan was created. So it's been the same amount of time since we've met. And actually, what prompted the last meeting between the two bodies was there were some questions around our use agreement that we had in terms of the shared resources that we were doing. A process that we initially set up, and there were questions, and so on the anniversary of the renewal of that document, we got both bodies together to take action on that. And there were a lot of other things that were agendized together with that. But as I recall, it really was it had a very specific purpose in that we wanted to have both bodies together to discuss this issue that both had to agree to. So it was actually something where we were actually all voting on a particular thing, and it wasn't really just informational. And so that there was a need to have the bodies kind of like a joint session of Congress where both houses need to be in sync and make those decisions. So I think it was a nice meeting. It's been a while. I mean, it was nice to have everybody in the same room, but I mean, lacking an agenda where we actually need to have both bodies in the same meeting. I would think that it's a lot of work to pull that together, and if it's not something that's going to require votes of both bodies, then I think a lot of those other things that are informational have generally been addressed in either the collaboration between the city manager and the superintendent, or through subcommittees. And I'm just wondering if those are just if Councilmember Mason feels those are not adequate, or if there's something additional that would be agendized that would require that level of interaction.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Mayor Medina.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medina. 10:53. So I can support this, but we definitely have to have an agenda. I don't want to just meet just for the, I know all of the school board members, trustees, and I think we could benefit from it. I think it's a great way to show some unity, but we definitely need an agenda to go over and make sure it doesn't turn into this wild, 4-hour-long meeting. And it'd be wonderful if we could take a stab at that agreement, whatever agreement that is that we had. In my 4 years, I haven't seen it. Is it still valid? Or maybe my memory, I forget that it just hasn't happened. But it should be something that we actually get something done with an agenda. So I think this points out one of the problems with our committee structure is that we don't have a reporting mechanism. And if we have two members that are on an ad hoc committee and if they don't report out, well, how else are they going to do it? Because it's a violation of the Brown Act if they tell any of us of it, right? We can't talk to them about it. So we need to look at our governance, and maybe this will spur that. But I would fully support this with an agenda that's kind of thought out, and you guys, or we can figure out what that should be. But without an agenda, it would be just a free-for-all, and I don't really want one of those. So it will be Zoomed, and of course, I don't want to put too much on staff's plate because we know that these are additional things, right? That but how we work that out, I'm supporting.
So for me, as Mr. Salazar said, in 214, there was that, and it's the master field schedule, which the Salazar, Medina, Chavez, and Sanchez met in regards to that because it's due again. So staff has the document, which has to be redone, updated, and re-voted on. So that is something that maybe, if that can be done at that time, that's something that can be done. I concur that to have a real agenda, it can't, because obviously if it's not agendized, we can't really talk about it. But just to meet, to go over COVID updates or something like that, maybe that's not the wise time. I mean, what I do wish is we could meet in person, because that's part of it. Like when we went to the Skyline College, we met with the College District Board and the City Council. We did one or two topics, but we also had a tour of a facility. So that was kind of a nice thing to see something new that they were offering, which some of the Cappuccino students were taking part in. So if we do this, yes, I think it's necessary for an agenda. I also think it needs to be mindful of how much time it would take for staff, because if it's like, well, let's give 5 presentations, well, that's PowerPoints, that's them rehearsing, that's them. And again, we have to be mindful of that. So I would say it would have to be an agreed upon agenda. What I also believe is if we all sit down and say, well, I want, this could be a very long meeting. So I think we would need to have the superintendent and city manager maybe collaborate on what is coming up, what's most important, and also just a real honesty about time management. What do they have the time, and then that. So that's just my immediate thoughts. I want to go to I see over in the conference room, their hand is up, so I'm assuming that's the city manager. He's probably by himself now.
Yeah, I am by myself now. I just wanted to recommend a clear process for deciding on the agenda, and Councilmember Medina, you said a little bit of what I was about to say, so I won't repeat it. Totally willing to sit down with the superintendent and come up with a presentation. In a prior life, I have participated in these joint meetings before. 2 lessons learned. Typically, they are mainly presentations because every topic has to be agendized. You know, let's talk about brainstorming and ways to collaboration. You can't put that on an agenda. You have to have specific topics. And then the other lesson learned is some of the juicier topics you actually can't talk about. And some of those were mentioned by Councilmember Mason, like the development projects. The City Council has to remember that you are the regulatory agency, and decisions on the use and reuse of some of those school sites will likely come to you, or your planning commission, and can be appealed, or you can call up. And so those topics likely cannot be agendized, or it has to be a very, very narrowly tailored topic about that property. And so, I think the agenda may not be as sort of enticing as people envision it would be, because it can't be this sort of wide open ranging conversation, because you can't agendize sort of everything. And again, some of the most interesting topics, there may be a regulatory reason why the city council cannot engage in that conversation. But happy to work with the superintendent on an agenda.
Okay, so are we comfortable with that? By letting the superintendent and the city manager kind of collaborate of what we can talk about it, right? Or to try to confine it so that we don't go outside the parameter and we all get ourselves in trouble for trying to, talk. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you. So there is an ad hoc committee, and I believe I heard that we met with the other side, our partners. So my concern is making sure that the council representatives are there to kind of work with the agenda, because if we just left it up to the city manager and the superintendent, then just want to make sure that there's some input on what we're going to talk about, because what's the point if we don't allow those other members to contribute? So that's my concern of just how you worded it.
Yeah, so on the school district side, that would be for them to discuss and figure out how that meets their needs and best. And for us, I would say, that can be worked with the manager or what have you, but at least get some foundation together about how do they envision it. And again, it's going to be 10 of us Zooming in plus them, and so, or whoever else they may think we need to. I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. We may have to start bringing in other city staff members. Maybe you need to have the community services director. Maybe you need to have, but yeah, that can be run up or reviewed. How's that? I guess that's what I'm going to say. Thank you. Okay, so I've heard, Linda, that everybody is thumbs up, letting the superintendent and the manager talk, maybe develop, have on our side the agenda reviewed. I'll use, since Marty gave me that thumbs up on that word, reviewed, and then try to facilitate something that works for both sides as far as day and time.
Yep, and I'm fine with Councilmember Medina's comment that for the city council, I'm fine with the ad hoc committee working with the city manager to create the agenda. So I'd support that.
Okay, well, is there anybody that is not in support of that? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So silence is good, means next. All right, let's move on to the next bullet point, please. Expand the Citizens Revenue Oversight Committee, Measure G, committee to 7 seats. And I'm just going to stop. This says and, but period. Go ahead, council member.
Oh, the next one was Val Crystal, right?
No, this is the Expand the Citizens Revenue Oversight Committee, Measure G, to 7 seats. Second bullet point.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, gotcha. I have it in a separate part of my notes.
Okay.
So, the item came before the council last year, shortly after being asked whether the reason for the increase when it was brought to council previously was to increase diversity. 3 council members, after responding yes, still voted against the request as not necessary. I bring this back now because it was exciting for me to see in this past year's election how many candidates expressed their desire for more diversity in our committees. Between candidates sharing their ideas and desire for diversity and the numerous endorsements from organizations that support increased diversity, it really seems appropriate to bring this back at this time, especially with everything going on, for the Measure G committee to support an increased committee of up to 7 people. I reiterate that the current Measure G committee is qualified, as all council members have already expressed. It would be nice to have more representation, similar to the Community Foundation, the San Bruno Education Foundation, and the Measure X Committee, all of whom are mentioned because they are specific San Bruno organizations who are also responsible for administering funds. Diversity does not just represent race and ethnic backgrounds, but age. How great would it be to get more youth involved in our committees? But it also includes different bases of knowledge, educational backgrounds, and the list goes on and on. This should not be additional staff time because we already have candidates that this council unanimously said was qualified, minus Tom Hamilton, who was not on the council yet. But in an effort to minimize staff time, we could select from the existing pool, assuming that they are all still interested. So at this time, I'd request that the council support increasing the Measure G committee from 5 to 7 members to hopefully increase the diversity, and have staff begin working on that immediately so that we have the new committee by the time that we're asking for Measure G funds again for the next budget cycle.
Okay, thank you. And I've noticed that we have a member of the public with the hands up, and I don't know if it was for the past item or if it's for this one. So council's approval plus the delayed hour. I'm going to ask for the member of the public to be brought in and speak since it's 11 o'clock.
Robert Rico, 1 moment. Hello, Robert, whenever you're ready.
I just had 2 parts to the question. What functions can the 5 members of the current oversight committee not perform currently? And why not go to 9 members if you're going to expand it, then go to 7 as versus staying at 5 where I think you belong? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments and question. Okay, we're going to bring it back to council and Councilmember Hamilton.
So,
please.
I'm glad that Councilmember Mason made sure to mention that this discussion is not at all a reflection of on the 5 members who were appointed. Each of them were, applied, were deemed well qualified, and were appointed to a volunteer position in good faith. So there's none of this is a reflection on any of them. But the reality is that the 5 member that we ended up with a lot of people who look like me, and not a whole lot of people who look like the 4 of you, frankly. So there's nothing how you look. There's nothing wrong with how you look. Yeah, but you get my point. Especially because this is it's right in the name. This is a citizens oversight committee that's supposed to, so that the people of San Bruno have a voice in how the Measure G money is spent. And I completely agree that in order to be an effective committee, it needs to reflect as many of the people of different backgrounds that make up our community. And speaking to Mr. Reichel's suggestion, I would be fine going to 9 if that's going to get us a better representation. But I do think that we need to address the current situation by increasing the number of members. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Salazar.
So just, one slight correction in that, the Citizens Oversight Committee is actually not responsible for coming up with ideas on how to spend the money. And it's really just a committee that's there to ensure that the staff proposals that are coming to council meet the needs, meet the spirit of the rules that we established for spending the money. So there's really not a lot of opportunity for creative use of the funds, or even diverse use of the funds. The funds are pretty much they're in the general fund, but I think the general understanding and council's position has been very firm that those funds should go primarily into the roads, because that was a big point of advertising. And so while I'm a huge fan of diversity, and I agree with Councilmember Mason's assessment that we need to do what we can to diversify all our committees and commissions, this particular one is a very technical one, and a lot of the applicants and the people that we ended up choosing with do have a pretty broad background in oversight. Most of them have served either in other oversight committees and brought a lot of experience related to the job that was being done. And so in that particular instance, I think that this committee, similar to the Planning Commission, we tend to scrutinize a little bit more than we do on some of the other committees where we do look for more of a diversity and bringing in different viewpoints. The Planning Commission, again, has a very technical requirements that they need to meet. They need to be able to analyze the very detailed plans that are put before them. This committee needs to be able to scrutinize financial projections that are put before them and spending plans. And so for that reason, I feel it's a little bit different. And for that reason, I was in favor, last time this came up, I was in favor of leaving it at 5. I feel 5 is a good number for people to be able to be assembled quickly, to make decisions, not so small that if one person is missing, you can't move forward. And so it seemed like a good size. There's a number of other committees we have that are 5-member committees, and they seem to function well. So I'm not dead opposed having 7, but as I recall, there wasn't a whole lot of diversity in our applicant pool either, and so we're always going to be limited by who applies. And sometimes when you're trying to decide who's going to serve the committee best, who's going to serve the city best, and it's a very limited pool. I mean, you might have one person that's more diverse than the rest, but maybe not as qualified as somebody else. I would hesitate to do that reverse affirmative action and pick somebody who's slightly less qualified only because they bring diversity. So those are my comments. I mean, I'm not opposed to having more members on the committee. I just feel that we have to be careful about why we're doing it. And we had the discussion last time. I don't think that anything has really changed. We were in a hurry then to seat some people and get them in place so that we could make some decisions on that money. And so we moved forward. I believe they're probably getting ready to meet again soon. And so I would hate to try to rush into another decision to add more people to meet that deadline. So at this point, I say, maybe we can look at that a little bit later. I don't want to try to rush that. I don't think that it's that necessary right now.
Before I go to the Vice Mayor, so yes, they meet tomorrow. And then their next regular scheduled meeting is January of 2022. Vice Mayor Medina.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it being 7 members. It's too soon for them to probably get selected. My problem with choosing only those that applied previously, I think there could be some people out in the public that looked at the number of people who are applying and kind of went, you know what, I'm not gonna bother. So I think we should take a little bit of time to put it out for the public to participate, interview, and seat them. So that's it. So I'm in favor of moving forward. It doesn't have to, be super rushed, but I think we should have interviews, because there could be people out there that really want to take on this job. So, thank you.
I would say for me, I'm not opposed to going to 7. Another reason, if you remember, is DeMartini had said, hey, we need to get this up. There's a lot to go through in the beginning. 5 is a much more manageable number, so that we can get this goal and get the ball across the finish line. I also would concur that if you're going to do it, then you do it, and that means you open it up, because a lot of time has passed. Some folks may wish to still apply. Those that have applied can still be asked, see if they're still interested, but then you open up to the community, because that's what we're all saying is we want to have folks. So, the other thing too is we're saying diversity because of by maybe youth or age or stuff like that. So I just don't know. I went back to look at the last time when we discussed this on June 23rd, and it was very specific, like, well, those that have young children in the community, the trying to get diversity, but it was kind of all over. And I thought like some of the rationale for the diversity was stuff you can't ask on an application. So I want to make sure, and let me tell you, I saw Dave Nigel's application when he first applied 50 something years ago, and there was a lot of questions on this application back then in the city you cannot ask today. And so I just want to make sure that we're doing it for the right reason. I don't think that there is a rush because they do meet tomorrow, so that's not going to happen. And so, but you know, I think opening it up, yes. Am I opposed to 7? No. And are the 5 doing the job? Yes. I think we said that last time when they came back and said, hey, we don't like that $40-something thousand. We don't recommend that. And so, you know, I think that they're doing the job. So, but I saw, okay. And then there's somebody from the community just put their hand up. So I'm gonna stop. Ask city clerk to bring in Mr. Smith.
Oh, Smith, just one moment, I'm trying to get you unmuted.
Thank you. I'm here.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Great. I just want to say I don't see any harm at all in having diversity, and it's definitely what we need. And you know, the difference between 5 and 7 people, you know, to have oversight on what we're doing with our funds, you know, the more eyes, the better. So, and definitely if they're coming from different backgrounds. So I'm just fully, I think it's a great idea, and I hope that the council passes it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Well, I think you've heard from everybody that they're willing to look at that concept just about how fast. City manager, is there something, what would you suggest? Because there's difference. I've heard from Mr. Hamilton from the current pool. I've heard from the 2 Medinas that said, open it up. So, Mr. Hamilton.
I actually never said one way or the other who to pick from, and I would be in favor of inviting the previous pool plus opening up to any new applicants.
And I apologize, it might be the hour, but you're correct. Councilmember Mason said he was trying to limit staff resources, and
Yes, that was one of the issues that was raised by other council members in the past. So I was okay with that, but I'm definitely open to opening the applicant pool. I know that was done in the past, so I don't see why it couldn't be done again. I'm fine with that.
Okay, well, that took care of that problem. Everybody's good for the most part. City manager, if you could come into the discussion and maybe give us a suggestion on what would you, how best to move this, to bring it back as we talked about.
Sure. So staff has no preference on the recruitment methodology. I think we've heard probably from a majority of council that they would like to or are okay with opening the recruitment back up. We can certainly execute that. Typically the challenge is not a workload issue with regard to these recruitments. It's your schedules and getting you guys together for the lengthy interview process. Depending on the number of applicants. And so initially, you know, my gut was you guys may decide to use the pool, but if you want to go a different way, we're happy to implement that, and we will work with you guys based on the number of applicants to schedule a interview process, of course, virtual, where you guys can do that, and we can certainly support that.
And then I think it also, you know, we just are posting for a planning commissioner, we're posting for a personnel board. So this would give an opportunity to not just do one, but do them all, I would think, right? And so we can get these bodies up to full capacity. So city manager, if you and the staff can work on that and just give us an update.
We'll do. We'll post the recruitments and identify a schedule and work with you on scheduling.
And like I think Vice Mayor said, I mean, this doesn't have to happen tomorrow. So do understand. Let's, if we're going to do it, let's make sure we're actually pushing it out into avenues and areas that maybe we always don't think of going, but maybe there's some new opportunities outside the box that in these COVID times that we might be able to get the word out. Okay, so let's move on to the third bullet point. Request City Manager to 1, schedule a closed session of the City Council to discuss the possibility of acquiring the El Crystal property from the San Bruno Park Unified School District, and 2, assess the potential opportunity for lease of site for Park and Rec substation during the RAC, which is Recreation Aquatic Center construction. And so I'm going to turn it over to Council Member Mason, but to all of us, I want to kind of temper how much we say, because obviously if you're talking about potentially going into a closed session in regards to this topic, I think we need to kind of keep it very brief, less is more. So anyway, Council Member.
Great. So we recently learned through a public correspondence from the San Bruno Park School District that the sale of El Crystal School has fallen through. As a planning commissioner, I urge the city to thoroughly consider the purchase of this property when the opportunity was presented. Since I was not on the council at the time, I'm not sure what discussion was had around this topic, nor can I guess, nor would I have guessed that I would be here today as a council member with this as a potential opportunity. Provided that the sale has not gone through, we do not know whether the San Bruno Park School District has any plans for the property. The school site adjacent to our beautiful San Bruno Park should not go unignored, which is why this item is agendized tonight. With the RAC scheduled to break ground this year, the timing could not be better to consider El Crystal as an alternative site. However, does this make sense? What would it cost the city? Would the construction be too prohibitive to individuals who may need to go and sign up for any kind of classes? We don't know. We don't have the answer to all these questions. So the request tonight is to ask staff to have these questions and any other answers needed by the San Bruno Park School District and San Bruno to be answered in order to make an effective decision, if that decision is even available. If it's not available, okay. If it's too expensive, okay. If it's a possibility, okay. But we just don't know until we ask. So I'm asking the council tonight to support this request that may behoove the city. The second part is, with the recent sale of El Crystal falling through, what, if any, opportunities for the city to acquire the property are available? And any information that would be related to this potential question. In speaking with the city manager on this topic, the most appropriate direction at this time is to request council support in scheduling a closed session. And that's what I'm requesting tonight, to have a closed session regarding the potential acquisition of the property, if that's even on the table, because we don't know anything more than that the property fell through with the San Bruno Park School District. So I don't know if City Attorney Zaffarano thinks we should take these as separate topics, or if the council agrees on both topics, if we can just move forward.
Okay, so we have a member of the public. We have Trustee Jennifer Blanco. I'm going to ask her to be brought in for her participation, and then we also have another person, Mr. Reichel. City Clerk?
Yes, just one moment. Yes, Ms. Blanco? Ms. Blanco, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
whenever you're ready, you can start.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening and Happy New Year. This is Jennifer Blanco. I'm one of the 5 trustees on the San Bruno Park School District, and I so apologize. I'm experiencing technical difficulties here at home. I was trying to log on. So thank you for this time. I just wanted to touch base on the item that Councilwoman Mason spoke earlier regarding having the joint, the 2 city governances meeting. I'm supportive of that, as I've been one of the 5 board members, actually I think the only one on the board who has been very adamant about reconvening that meeting once again. I think the first and last one we had was in the days of former Superintendent Dr. David Hott, which was years ago. And it was a very beneficial meeting for both parties. And not only did, I think it was Marty, I do believe you mentioned that it was that we were going to be presenting like it was just a united front. It was actually more than that. And so the process that that was followed back then was we had the Joint Executive Advisory Committee meet. It wasn't just the city council, it wasn't the city manager only and the superintendent. So it was we call it the Joint Executive Advisory Committee. So it'd be the 2 board members, superintendent, city manager, and the 2 city council members that represent that committee on your side. So instead of just having the superintendent and the city manager meet, that's the way that was done back then. I would suggest that we adhere to that same procedure as well, because then when us board members forward our agenda items to the board members that represent us on that meeting, committee, then the 2 of you representing the city council will bring forth your agenda items as well. So I hope to reconvene that committee meeting again with both city council members, all 5 city council members, and all 5 of us board members. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for bringing it up, Linda. I really appreciate it. You all have a good night.
Have a good evening, and we've given directions to staff. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Robert Rico. One moment. Hi, Robert.
Good evening, good morning almost. Linda's request is to consider to discuss the possibility of acquiring, and later she said, purchasing the El Crystal property from the San Bruno Park School District if they are the owners of the property. Obviously, if we were to purchase it, where's the money coming from? But since this was agendized on here, I don't think you can go into a closed session, because the citizens in San Bruno that read this will not have any idea of what you're doing. So I don't want you going into a closed session. There needs to be some discussion with the community in an open agendized setting before you go into a closed session. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Any other speakers? I don't see any.
No, I see no.
Okay. So, okay, so we have a request, and it wouldn't be convening tonight, so there wouldn't be any closed session this evening, just for clarity. I think there are 2 questions being asked here. Assess the potential opportunity for potential use or lease of El Crystal Elementary. I know that the superintendent, well, we all got the email that Stratford School had withdrawn in escrow, and so that site is open. I believe maybe the superintendent and or city manager, I know they have regular discussions. I don't know if this is already something that's looking at, which would probably be brought up at the RAC meeting, because as you know, they've looked to city property, they've looked to Cappuccino High School, etc. So that's one, but if they're already in dialogue, then I don't know that we need to reinvent that. But on the closed session, I think it's just a matter of a yes or no, if we want to have that done, rather than getting into the specifics or our feelings on it. I don't want that here. But city attorney, let's just clarify what the speaker had asked.
Sure. Well, there is no proposal to have a closed session tonight. That you can't add a closed session to tonight's agenda anyway. So the proposal is simply to direct the city manager to schedule a closed session at an upcoming meeting to discuss the price and terms of sale in the event that there is a negotiation open between the city of San Bruno and the school district.
And it is true, Councilmember Mason, no, you don't know what transpired, but we did have a closed session before, but that was then, this is now. So let's just go around the room whether we want to ask city manager to do so. Councilmember Hamilton.
So we're treating the number 1 and number 2 of this bullet separately?
Why don't we do the number 1 separate, and I'm going to ask the city manager on number 2, because I think they've already had the discussion.
Okay. Short and sweet. I'm supportive of asking for a closed session.
Councilmember Salazar, thank you.
I think they're good ideas, and we've definitely discussed them before. They've been before. What's a little unusual is us sort of asking for a closed session before there's anything to negotiate, because normally it would work the other way around. So I'm not exactly sure what would be discussed in the closed session. Generally, when there's a proposal for us to hear, we would have staff would request a closed session for us to deliberate on it. So I'm not exactly sure if there's anything that's closed session worthy. And there are definitely limits on what we can have closed sessions on. And if it's just a concept, I don't know that qualifies for a closed session. But I mean, if it does fall within that, within that category of things that we're allowed to meet privately on, then I'll support it. But I'm not sure that it does.
The city attorney, to that question?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So, of course, this is the first time that many of us are hearing about this particular issue. We heard about it a few days ago when it was requested to be placed on the agenda. I'm not personally familiar with what, if any, proposal the school district may or may not have made. The only thing that can be discussed in closed session is the price and terms of sale or lease of the property. So, so you would be instructing your real estate negotiator, in that case, the city manager, regarding the price and terms of sale or lease of the property in a closed session. So I think it would be best to leave that decision up to the city manager to determine if there is such a proposal, and if and when the city does receive such a proposal, then that's what can be discussed in closed session, or the price and terms of sale or lease of the property.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Medina.
Yeah, I understand the intent. So what happened last time, what I could share is when any public property from the school is available as surplus property that they're going to sell it, they have to offer it. And the city at that time could decide if the property is still for sale, which we don't know, right? So that offer will go out, and then we would meet to determine if we wanted to bid on the property or not. So I think we're kind of a little ahead of the game here, because that would occur, and that's what occurred last time. As for the rack, I think that's within their city manager's authority to negotiate a lease or an interest in it, and if I think we should be looking at it. That should be another option, since it's so close and it's not going to cap, and it wasn't available before. So I'm a little hesitant in that we're jumping the horse a little bit here. Like we need to wait. But the city manager is hearing all this, so it's I'll let him figure out how to talk about acquiring space for our rec center. And as for a closed session, it's not necessary yet until we know that they're offering it for sale again.
Okay, and then we'll go to the manager after me, and I believe also it's too early, because we don't even know what is transpiring. So I think that's where the manager would need to reach out, and I don't even know where it's at, after Stratford stepped back from it. So I think there are parameters in which for us to meet in closed session. They have to be identified. We have to have information for us just to talk to say, so what are they going to do? I mean, that can be a dialogue, and maybe the manager may know something, but I think we're putting that, they come to us when there's something for surplus or to purchase or negotiate. And so I'd like to have that same path done, rather than having a meeting to talk about a what if, we don't know what that if is. City manager.
Sure. Boy, this is an interesting one. And it's one of those areas where I like, because in general, everybody's right. The city attorney is right. We can go into closed session to talk about price and terms. The council members that have said, we don't know what they're doing with it. They haven't offered it for sale. Maybe we're too soon because we don't even know if it's for sale. They're sort of right. The other council member Mason that's saying, hey, let's talk about it. Maybe we'll make an offer. She's also right? Someone doesn't have to have a property for sale for you to talk about price and terms to give them an offer. And that can legitimately happen in closed session. And I see the city attorney is nodding his head. And so this is really a decision for council. Of course, Superintendent Espinoza and I are in close communications. We talked today, we talked yesterday, we talked shortly after they sent their press release saying that Stratford School, that deal was off. I don't think the district has met to talk about what their next steps are. Should the city council want to have a closed session to say, hey, let's potentially offer the district something for the property, you can do that in closed session. Or you can wait to see what their next steps are and make that decision later. Totally a decision of the council. On the point with regard to temporary facilities, I know the council knows this, but it's important for the public. It potentially may be a nice location for temporary facilities while the new recreation and aquatic center is being constructed. That was never entertained because with the Stratford sale, they were actually going to be under construction when we were under construction. Now that that's off, it's, I certainly think it's reasonable to see if the district has plans for that facility over the next 2.5 years, and would our use be consistent with whatever their plans are. Even if they were going to sell it, somebody conceivably would have to go through an entitlement process so we could occupy it while they're going through that process. I reached out to the superintendent. I see he's with us at 11:56 p.m.
Wow.
And so he is tracking this conversation. And so he and I will certainly connect. We talked about taking a tour of the facility. It has been vacant for several years. And so there's honestly a number of questions I have before I could even entertain the idea of tilting it up as a temporary facility. Because if it costs a pretty sum for us to go in there and make it habitable for our temporary operations, I think the other plans that we have in place may be more appropriate. And so work needs to happen to have that conversation in any detail. And I'll tell you, those conversations already started. But then back to the closed session, I think we can take an action tonight and say, you know what, we're going to have one to potentially talk about if we wanted to make an offer, how we could potentially fund that and where we have money, or we can wait until later until sort of more things are known. But certainly we can only talk price and terms. We can't talk potential use, what we would use it for, what's the public good of the city owning it. All of that stuff has to happen in public. We can only talk price and terms. And the council members that said that that it is typical that you would have a closed session only having first had those conversations, you're right to. But that's not to say you can't do it in reverse.
So I guess once you hit 11:30 p.m., everybody's right. So that makes it easy for us. So with that said, I'm just going to speak for myself. Since you're already talking to the superintendent in regards to the potential opportunity, going to tour it, I say that you're already doing it. So that's already being done, and then you'll put that in possible in your hand of opportunities if it pans out. And as far as the closed session, personally, just for me, I think we need to wait to see what the district's going to do or what their plan is. And I'm sure when you guys tour, Crystal, maybe you have a conversation, but that's me. So, Vice Mayor Medina, sorry.
Upon hearing what our city manager just said, I think we should go ahead and just schedule it and to have the discussion. So I'm in favor of this.
Okay, and Mr. Hamilton's still in favor?
Yes.
Mr. Salazar? Well, we have a majority, so I think there's a consensus. There's already so city manager. However it works, that it's able to be listed appropriately. I'll let you and the city attorney work it out.
Mayor Medina, I do think we need for the record to know how everyone feels about it, because we're taking an action. That's why it's agendized.
Well, we haven't voted on the rest. We're just giving direction, and so the direction is there's the majority of the council that wants to do it. You already heard what I said. So, but staff's being city managers heard it, city attorneys heard it, to go ahead and figure out a time and place for a closed session that meets within the parameters of to meet the legal needs of everything. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. So maybe let's get out into the same day. Comments from council members on Mr. Salazar. Update on San Bruno Hearts Committee and discuss future activities.
Okay, thank you. And I'll try to be very brief. So back last summer in July, we established a Heart Committee, and we met for the first time in October. We had 2 meetings this last year, October and November. And the primary task of the committee was to take the lead on the city's observation of United Against Hate Week. And to that end, the committee created a public service announcement, a video featuring some San Bruno residents speaking out about inclusion and their thoughts on diversity in San Bruno. And the committee also created an extensive list of books and videos that highlighted diversity topics that were available for that week. And they're still out there on the website for anyone who still is interested in either seeing the video or following up on some of the reading material. And so when the committee was established, it had, one of its goals was to take the lead on United Against Hate, and also there was a few other topics, including building trust and strengthening partnerships within the community. And so at this point, and I want Councilmember Mason to speak on this, because she's co-chairing this with me, so I want to get her input as well. But we felt at this point it was appropriate to come back to the council to sort of update on what had happened in this last year. It was kind of a mad scramble at the end once we got the committee assembled. We have a really, really great group of people on the committee right now, really hardworking, bunch of people that are just so willing to roll up their sleeves and not only come up with ideas, but actually execute on them. And so there's a lot of potential there with this group, and I want to make sure that we keep that momentum going. So with that, I'm going to ask Councilmember Mason to also give us her thoughts on how things went and some of her ideas, and we'll see where the council wants to go with that. They're definitely not looking for direction tonight, but just want to put it out there, and then we can come back for a discussion at some later time.
Yeah.
Councilmember Mason.
Thank you. I just want to thank Councilmember Salazar for agendizing this topic. I think it's great that he wanted to initiate the report out. I think it was really nice, actually. I'm not sure I forgot how the group was put together, but it was a really nice spread of different parts of San Bruno, from our schools to I believe there was someone from one of the local churches. Very diverse, and different ages. It's a really nice group of people that we're working with. And the United Against Hate Week, I thought, was a success. It's unfortunate because we had planned to show the actual documentary, but we just weren't able to. But I just think, pushing out the information on social media of what people can read, what people can watch, what podcasts are available. I'm thinking of doing that again, just because I thought it was really great. But I think upcoming topics, we've got Black History Month coming up. We've got Women's History Month coming up. So maybe some activities that could be done in our COVID world around those topics or those months. Just some thoughts. But overall, I think the committee was really engaged. I'm not sure if everybody on the council knows, but we were split into 2 separate committees, And in addition to the committee meetings, we also met outside of those meetings to bring back to the committee the ideas that eventually came to fruition. So it was nice, and it was a big time commitment for a lot of people on the committee. So I want to thank everybody who may watch this that participated.
Okay, and just as a reminder, the Heart Committee, I brought to council the categories of who we were going to try to get, and reached out, like Councilmember Mason said. I went to Father Mike at St. Bruno's to have, went to Saida, the chamber, to ask, and went through that to get that. And I must say, speaking and interviewing or meeting, I was very impressed with the folks, and I'm glad to hear that is a good group that does what comes through and is valuable and should continue. So, Vice Mayor Medina or Councilmember Hamilton, anything to add or comment?
Mr. Hamilton, you can go first.
Oh, I just want to applaud the formation of this committee and all of the good work that it's doing. This committee embodies all the best things of San Bruno, about what this community is and what this community can do. So I absolutely applaud all the efforts that have been done on this. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I concur. I thank you both for reporting out. It's probably the first report out in a very long time of a committee. So thank you, and thank everybody for their good work.
Okay. So, and I apologize, but going back under council comments, Councilmember Mason, do you have any other comments for tonight?
Oh, I just wanted to thank staff for putting together that really fun video, wishing everyone happy holidays. It really made my day. I love that City Attorney Zafrano speaks Italian. Who knew?
Yeah, nice.
And I just really enjoyed watching it, to be honest. So I want to thank staff for putting that together. It was great. Thank you.
Councilmember Salazar, was there anything else you wanted to add under council comments?
No, that's it. We're right under the gun here to finish by midnight. So
Councilmember Hamilton.
I'll do it really, really fast. I just want to say thank you to the folks who spoke in public comment and offered their kind congratulations to me. And I also would like to thank the city manager and city staff who have helped me so much with my onboarding process, and for all of you for welcoming me so nicely onto this body. And I look forward to doing great work for the city with you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Medina.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to share with the community that this Saturday, our San Bruno Park School District will be having a special board meeting to talk about governance and training, and this new era of working together. I think if people are really interested in the schools, you should start attending their Zoom meetings. And I'd like to thank Superintendent Espinosa if he's still on the line. If not, he reminded me and asked me to go ahead and see if I could help promote the meeting. So that being done, one serious point, I got a call 2 days ago from a resident in a frantic tone saying, where can I get tested? I was in contact with somebody that has COVID. And that struck me like, well, I can't really do anything for you right now. And it's just a reminder of people just need to be really safe, right? Don't put yourself in that position where you're going to be frantically worried about what to do. And so wear your mask, wash your hands, stay away from people, and just be careful, because if you could hear the fear in somebody, well, what should you do now? Well, wow. Okay, kind of try to stay away from people at home, and you got to wait a certain number of days to get tested because it's not going to show up like immediately. So just be careful out there, and we made it this far. Just continue making a sacrifice for you and your family. Thank you.
Okay, and I know it's late, folks, but I'll cut out my personal comments and I'll just go. We're going to adjourn. It has been a tough year last year, and it's this year starting off a little tough too. But there are two individuals that that we have lost that I wanted to bring up and give them the acknowledgement. The first one is waiting for the picture. The first one is former mayor and council member George Corey. George Corey, I got to read a little bit because folks, if you want, there we go. Okay, so yes, so a lot of things people don't know about him. I've had the opportunity to know him for quite some time, and he is a interesting gentleman that has a lot of history. And I'll try to make it brief, but just so people know. He went to the University of Michigan, where he played varsity running back for the Wolverines in the 1950s. He also served in the Air Force. After he was done with there, then he went and got his law degree and opened up in San Mateo County with Jack Bible and himself, and they started to do it. One of the things he noted in the story he tells is that one of his first fees was a tray of tomatoes from a grateful client because that's all that they could afford. But he also worked, one of the things he also talked about helping and supporting. He worked for the civil rights movement in Mississippi during the 1950s and represented demonstrators who were arrested while protesting discrimination in the 1960s. He was very much active in the community. I already alluded to the mayor and council. He also ran for Congress in 1979. So he's very engaged and very involved at the county level and giving. He also was in the Shelter Network. He was one of the board, which is How Life Moves. He's given to a lot, and you might have seen him at a council meeting. You also probably have seen him in the Posey Parade a few years ago, where he rode as a former council member. He truly, really cared. His office was in Millbrae, but he truly cared about San Bruno and his heart and his frank candor and advice sometimes when you asked for it, when you didn't. But he is truly a gentleman and made a great contribution to San Bruno, to this county, and to many people's lives. So I want to acknowledge former mayor and council member George Corey. Appreciate all he has done. The next person is Harry Costa. Harry Costa, which is an ideal one because I still have the medal from the 100th anniversary of San Bruno, and I still have that he produced. Was very proud of it. Harry, as you may know, is Just Things on San Mateo Avenue, and as I've understood it, it used to be the Optimist Club that ran and put on the Posey Parade, and then that started to fade, and then the Lions Club picked it up, which then Harry became very active. He was a part of the Lions. He was the president. You would see him drive his yellow Corvette, usually with Keith Telford, or sometimes a former city manager. So he was one that also was very instrumental in the Nerita. So not only did he love going to Nerita or Italy when he was able, but when the Nerita delegation would come, there would come Harry, no matter what, with sake, and then to toast to his friends, and he was with the Sister City Committee. I can't tell you, that he also was on the San Bruno Chamber of Commerce. He served on the board of directors, president, and chamber manager for several years. Also, if you folks who have been in town, you may remember the Bay Hill Wine and Art Festival, which was on San Bruno Avenue. That used to happen, and he was facilitated that because it had to do with cars, and he was a car fanatic. So, I've spoken prior to his passing and subsequent to his wife and his daughter, and they're very appreciative, and obviously it's been very tough. But, Harry is a man about town that always took care of the chamber, took care of local merchants, and would make sure he visited them, and loved his meals. And that it will never be the same, but we've lost a gem in Harry, and a man that I will tell you, going into his shop, he had stories. He knew things, and he had some I will miss him. He had some really great stories and really just was very candid and blunt. So for that, my colleagues, I want to adjourn this meeting in the honor of George Pori and Harry Costa, and also acknowledging that there's been a lot of loss of loved ones and family members. I know folks who are 41, 49, 51, and 55 within a month. And so it is just a friend and others, and it has just been really tough. So for all those that are suffering, for all those that may have lost someone, please never lose hope. Always keep the faith. And in all of their memories, and for a 2021 to be better, I'd like to adjourn for a moment of silence. And I'd like to go ahead and adjourn to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on January 26, 2021 at 7 o'clock via Zoom. Everyone, thank you. Good night, and then good morning. Take care.
Everyone, stay safe.